Welcome back. I am so excited that you have joined me again in the Aligned Womb, Aligned You podcast. I'm Kate Nagai, and I am your host and womb guide on this journey. I'm here to help you to lean into the language of your menstrual cycle so that you can align yourself and awaken and activate to your womb wisdom to live the most inspired life. I am so excited to jump into this episode and to dive into today's topic. So let's get started. It's been a little bit of a time since I've been on the podcast. It's been 3 weeks, and I want to share just a little bit before we jump into this week's episode. So I recorded an episode 3 weeks ago, all on rest, and for whatever reason, I just could not get it out into the internet world. You know, little excuses of like, it's the last week of school, I'm slammed, I can't do it. Oh no, it's Wild Rose. I even brought my computer to Wild Rose because I was like, I gotta get this episode out. And then something happened probably on the Saturday that it was like this aha moment. No, it was Sunday. It was a yin class that I was in. There was this hit that happened where it was like, that episode is not aligned. That episode is not what you really wanted to put out there about rest. And all these ideas came flooding in. So I'm in the process of re-recording it. So if you're like, where have you been? I've had stuff recorded, but it just hasn't felt right. And so it didn't go out there. And so next week, you'll get the episode that was intended 3 weeks ago, but revised and revamped. And I think more aligned with the message that I really wanted you all to walk away with. But this week, I have a very special guest, and I'm so excited to dive into this because this was one of those like, should we do this? We should do this. I think we should do this kind of episode. And so that's what we're doing today. I have a dear friend of mine who was at Wild Rose with me, and we both had very different and profound experiences at Wild Roses that I thought it would just be really great to come on here and kind of share some takeaways. Not so much in that I don't want people to walk away thinking, oh, I have to attend Wild Rose. But I really want the message to get out there about the power and the intention behind being in sisterhood and the things that can happen. And this can happen with a group of 2 of you. It can happen with 900 of you like it was at Wild Rose for Justine and myself. So this week I have Justine joining us. Thank you, Justine, for being here. And thank you for being in this space to be vulnerable and just really share about what happened, because we both had such great experiences at Wild Rose.
Yeah, I'm so excited, Kate. I think you and I have known each other for a couple years now. And just to get that time together at the festival to just connect in a way I don't think either of us expected with a third friend of ours. And I think just the ideas were flowing. All of us had such good energy coming out of the festival. And I'm just happy to talk about it today.
Well, and here's a little funny story. So Justine and I, we were complete strangers to each other 3 years ago. I had no idea who she was. She had no idea who I was. We both landed at Wild Rose for the first year. So for me, Lauren had reached out to me and said, I really would love if you could present at Wild Rose. And I was like, I would love to present at Wild Rose, but can I also be part of your Healers Village and do womb blessing entombments? Because for me, I had just finished my level 3. I was so excited about this work. Like, this is something that I had been doing for a few years. And I just felt like now that I had completely finished every level of training, unless if I wanted to actually teach people, like I was in the ripe of like really getting this energy workout. And so I agreed to do both, to be a presenter and to be in the Healers Village and to give these women attunements. And Justine was one of the people that signed up to do this weird Reiki womb treatment from me, had no idea. So we met there. You became a client. You've seen me a few times that year, just a few. And then we ran into each other again at Wild Rose, and she was pregnant, which was so exciting because she was coming to me for fertility issues. And then this year, I had to laugh so hard. It was like January. I get a text message from you, and you're like, will you camp with me at Wild Rose this year? And I was like, will I? I would love to. And so like we became such good friends since that conversation. I am so excited that one of us had the intuition or the guts to be like, hey, you want to be my friend? So
Oh my gosh. So from my point of view, that story is I came across Kate. We had a daughter. We knew we wanted a second baby. We weren't getting pregnant. I had turned 40, was in a panic, and so was doing all the spiritual things along with all the medical things. Long story short, a friend of mine, a new friend, invited me to go to Wild Rose. And she was like, I know there's lots of different fertility stuff there. Like, seek that out. She was on a totally different journey. She was doing other things. And so I did sign up for the womb attunement with Kate or with you. And yeah, I remember thinking, oh, this is so weird. Like, what am I doing? You were dressed all in white. It was very like, you know, spiritual and woo woo, but hey, it was the start of something. And yeah, like you said, we saw each other several times after that for treatments. And you were sort of like the person that referred me to, this person here and this person there. Like, I think you referred me to my naturopath through the pregnancy. Like, you just are so connected and you know the right people, to get pregnant and then also while I was pregnant. So, and then as we got to know each other, like I came to see you after I had Madeline, my now 9-month old, and she must have been a month old. And I sat on your table and you did like a postpartum Reiki treatment on us as Maddie slept. And I think just like that was such a cool moment too, because it was like so full circle. So yeah, here we are today.
Here we are today. And it was a crazy journey this year of camping together because you reached out to me originally and you're like, hey, I want to stay at a yurt because I have to bring Madeline with me. Would you mind staying with me and my baby? And I was like, I would love to stay with you and your baby. Like, that doesn't bother me at all. And then the yurt fell through. But then we got an email saying that we might have a yurt. So then we didn't do anything because we're like, we have a yurt. And then all of a sudden it was like, you don't have a yurt. And it's like 2 weeks to the event. And somehow magically we ended up with a trailer at the event. We had like space to sleep. And then you decided not to bring Madeline. And it was just so perfect. It was just, yeah, it worked out exactly how it was supposed to. But so this year at the event, I think it's really interesting because every year has been a little bit more of an evolution for me. So first year I came in just as an expert and as like a presenter and a healer. Like I was just like, I'm here to like be fully of service. And I didn't even stay on site. Like I drove back to Edmonton every day for an hour and a half each day. And like I remember feeling so exhausted after that. I was like, I gave so much of myself to all of these magical women that were there. And a part of me felt a little sad because I was like, I've seen all these women and you could see the glow. You could see the excitement of being at Wild Rose. And I was like, I'm missing it all because I'm here doing all this stuff, which was what I needed to do for the first year. But the second year I was like, no, I'm staying on site. I don't care what it takes, but I'm staying on site and I'm going to the things and I'm doing the thing and I'm only doing one thing. Like I'm only presenting once and that's it. And last year for me, it was really like dipping my toes in. I'm an introvert. I do a lot of personal development, a lot of spiritual stuff, and I do it with a lot of strangers, but I don't know if I've ever been vulnerable, like been in a space where vulnerability was required in masses.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're
Yeah.
in these discussions and you're given information and then you're being asked for your body to register that information, whether that be through movement or breath work or some kind of like deep internalizing of it. And it was a lot. Like I remember just feeling like, ooh, this is work. And then this year, like I was like, okay, I'm excited. Like I know what's coming. I'm ready to do the work. And it was amazing. And I think some of it was you and Susie too, like having the two of you with me on the journey to push me out of my comfort zone and to do things that normally I would be like, I don't think I'm going to do that. And you're like, oh, you're going to do it. And it was so good. So for me, and I think we talked about this on the Sunday, because on Saturday, I had two really profound back-to-back experiences. One was very deep spiritual work that literally brought me to tears I was not expecting. It was ancestral healing. It was going back generations. And it was really amazing how I felt things that I didn't even know I needed to feel. And when I say like I cried, it was like the tears came, but they weren't like, it wasn't a sobbing. It was just like this cleansing. That's what it really felt like, was a cleansing. But right after that one, you're like, we're doing some African dance. And I was like, I don't dance in public. And you're like, oh, we're dancing. And we went out and it was like so much fun. I have never laughed and wanted to move my body more than I had in that moment. It was so good. And then the next morning, Sunday morning, I woke up and I did another movement practice, but this time it was myofascial release. And I felt so much stress relief and so much freedom in my tissues with how she was asking me to maneuver that I was like, I want more. I want more. And it was right after that one that you and I were talking that I was like, I think this year the theme for me was supposed to be like experience pleasure in a way that like I was moving my body and doing these things and fully taking in everything I possibly could in those things, in those movements, without really caring that anyone else was there or watching or potentially could see. Right? Like it was just like you got so deeply in the tunnel
Okay.
hole
Yeah.
that you
Yeah.
didn't even know that there was an audience. Like you just couldn't feel it. Like you were
Totally.
just like you're
Totally.
so embodied in it.
And I think as women, like I know for me, my husband makes fun of how terrible a dancer I am all the time. He thinks he's the best dancer. And I'm always very like conscious of the way I'm moving. And like,
Mhm.
just as women, we're always aware of like eyes on us and everything. And it
Yeah.
took exactly like 2 days before, because you say, and I remember looking at you like so confidently, like, yeah, we're gonna West African dance. And now I hear that it's so funny because that's so not me. But I was just like, you were exactly able to access like day 3 of that event, access a part of you that actually probably is the real you, like the true
Yeah.
confident, like, why wouldn't you move? Why, like, who cares? I don't know. It's just you're able to get to a place. I know I personally don't have access to that part of me on the day-to-day basis where
I
I
wonder,
just, yeah,
I wonder if that access though is part trauma response though, right? Because like
totally.
you have some deep ancestral trauma that you're healing and you're working through. For me, the trauma really is about perfectionism, which is a trauma
Mm,
response. Like it's about doing everything perfectly so that nobody can judge me
mm,
or say anything bad about me. And that goes into like being a stellar student
yeah.
to then being a stellar mom, right? Like I had to do all the research to make sure I was doing everything right. Like I cloth diapered, like I followed, like I did followed the steps like they're supposed to be followed and I
Yeah.
didn't want to mess it up, right? And so, and there was always this fear of like, how am I gonna have to defend myself or protect myself in any situation? And then we just didn't have to.
Oh,
Like, you know what I mean? Like when we
oh,
move our body freely, and we didn't care what anyone was watching. Like it was like I could let go of all those guards and all those protections of like, what is someone going to say? Someone going to
yeah,
say that I can't shake my booty to the left enough?
totally.
Like I
And
don't
you're
know.
right. I think it was just the perfect vortex because I think, or the perfect situation because I think, and this is our poor friend Susie, I'm going to talk about her. Like the first morning she woke up and had like terrible gas. And she was like, and I had just met her the day before and she was like, I have to leave the trailer. I have terrible gas. I got to go walk and fart. And I was like, who is this person that's just so like unashamed? And that's just kind of how the weekend went. Like that's just, I can't remember. I'm sure I had something else embarrassing go on too. But it just like the three of us were just so open and like you said at the beginning, vulnerable with each other. And and then that was like reflected in the broader community, right? Like I remember the first time I went to that festival and there was like I said to my husband when I came home, like naked boobies everywhere. Like I wasn't prepared for that, but like that kind of um unafraidness, like it just everyone feels safe. And
Yeah.
so you're able on every level, whether it's like, you know, yeah, you're able to just be vulnerable in every single way, whether it's what you're wearing or how you're feeling or how you're dancing or like what you're sharing with like really strangers, right? Like you're sharing healing
Mhm.
with like a 900 strangers. So I don't know, I've never seen anything like it.
I think like you said, allow yourself to be vulnerable. I think it's deeper than that. I think for the first time, we allow our shadow side to be seen by
Oh,
everyone.
yeah. Yeah.
Because like
Yeah.
no matter where you go in this, like whatever, because they have three different stages, three different talk presenters, they have three different talks going. There's always something going. And all of them, to somewhat of a degree, are calling you back into your shadow so that you can release it to find the joy.
Mm.
Like, whether that's the intention or not, that's often what happens. Like, everything that I went to, there was like a little bit of shadow work of just like, what
Okay.
if it makes you afraid? And how can you step into that even deeper to release it? I don't know.
Oh.
This year just felt so impactful because there's so many ahas that came out for me. Like, the big one was like really for the first time. And it's funny, I think I made this comment to you when we were in the African dance and doing it. She would had us doing something. And I was like, I don't think I've danced like this without
Mm.
alcohol ever. Like, I'm gonna go off now. But when I think back to like my university days, like I would let myself be that free only when I could use the excuse that I had alcohol in my system. It was like, oh, that's not me. That was my alcohol, right? Where today,
Mm.
like that day, it was just like I let it all out, and it was so much fun. It was such a great time. It was, yeah. And so like there was this healing of being able to really truly explore playfulness. And I'm going to say pleasure. And not in the sense that sometimes where our brain goes to, like it's not sexual pleasure. It was like pleasure of like, I can feel my body. I can feel my senses. I can allow myself to find freedom. And it felt so damn good.
And I hope, stop me if this is too personal, but I know, and I'm happy to talk about the stuff that I went through, but I know we talked like before we left, about like you had kind of were trying to wrap your head around everything that had gone
Mm-hmm.
on. And you had some huge epiphanies about your dad's death and like how that had affected
Mm-hmm.
you. Um, and I hope it's okay if I say this and
Yeah.
feel free to cut it, but like you had said, I can't remember what it was, the first incident was, but there had been something where you had gained some weight. Maybe it was like
Mm-hmm.
what one of your kids being born or something. And then you were explaining to me like how whatever it was, and this happened again when your dad died, your need to control and like fix everything for everybody, including your mom, had ultimately led you to like just like gaining stress weight. And so you were working through like realizing how you got where you were. And I'm guessing you're going to make some profound changes now to heal that, right? I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
I'm assuming. And so like that's sort of what you were working through.
That was
And
one of
I
the ones,
go
yeah, for sure. And yeah, it was when I bought our house, this house that we're
oh right.
currently in, that the sale of the house was so incredibly stressful that I ended up having a miscarriage and I gained 20 pounds. And it was all cortisol and stress related. And then the next surge that I had of that was when my dad died. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, I gained 20 pounds. But in both of those situations, and this was the epiphany that I had there, was that in both of these situations, I felt like I had to become so expansive and be so many roles in order for nothing to fall
Mm,
apart. That, of course, my body would also become
mm.
expansive, right? Like when I felt like I had to be this big masculine, I don't know,
Yes.
person that
Yes.
had to take on everything and had to control everything. And I had to be five different people. My body was like, all right, here we go. Like, if you want to be expansive, let's make you expansive. And so it's really funny because I've been sitting with that one for a bit over this week because we're now like 3 days post or 4 days post. And it was really interesting because it was the last 2 days in particular, even though started bleeding, I started bleeding Monday, right after Wild Rose. I knew it was going to happen. I knew my period wasn't supposed to come for a week. And I was like, I'm with all these women. I know my period's going to come. And yeah, lo and behold, it came. And so normally I'm really exhausted. I wasn't exhausted this period. I was like still full of energy. And so even though I was still bleeding the last 2 days, I have been more playful and more connective with my kids than I have been in a long time.
Oh,
And
me
it's not
too.
the, yeah, it's
Yes.
not the connectiveness of being away from them. It was this connectiveness of like, you became expansive to control everything. And now what does it feel like to not control and to just be playful and to be at their level? And so I haven't stepped on the scale. I have no idea, but I feel lighter. And I really do think my medicine, like, don't get me wrong. Anyone listening, yes, weightlifting and proper nutrition is all important. But for me, I think like it was this epiphany of like this summer, I'm going to do things that make me feel good. I'm going to do things that are fun. I am going to joke and play. And yes, I'll go kick the soccer ball around with my kids because it's fun and we're joking and we're roughhousing and we're going to go for bike rides and we're just going to experience life and we're going to experience movement and activity because of the joy in it, not because it's structured and I have to meet 30 minutes 3 times a week, which is not working. In fact, it's making me gain weight. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to just like find fun in movement and know that there's medicine in that too, right? Like I had this idea too. Like my grandmother, she was tiny and she didn't lift weights. She mowed the grass, she gardened, she took care of 9 kids. Like she, I don't want to say she hustled, but she hustled with joy, right? Like she did the thing. She
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
constantly moving and moving her body in many different ways. Like this is the woman that was 85 years old and on her roof shoveling off snow in the middle of winter that we all gave her crap about because she was 85 years old. But like she could climb a ladder. She could pull her weight on a ladder. She could do things, right? And so that's what I want. I want functional movement and
Mm.
functional joy, not things that feel like a routine and don't make me happy and keep me in that ucky state. So yeah.
Well, and I think, and I hope, and I know we talked about yoga, and I
Mm-hmm.
think this goes back to you, and I've talked lots about Kate Northrup, and I know you had a podcast with her and the nervous system work. I think this is just another piece of that, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
need, if you want, if like, I mean, and you look great the way you are, you don't need to make any changes, but if you're wanting to like, let go of some of that
Mm-hmm.
stress weight, or let's say like whatever you had to do to expand your body, then I think it all comes back to you feeling safe and
Yeah.
like, so if yoga makes you feel safe, if it's going for a walk, whatever it is, like maybe it's just resting, like maybe you just need more naps. Maybe I don't know what it is.
I've napped every day this week. It's ridiculous.
Perfect.
But no, you're onto something. And it's so true. Is my naturopath has said a lot about going back, getting back into my regular yoga practice. Cause I used to practice like 5 days a week. Like I never skipped. And, kids and complicated pregnancies and all that kind of fell out the window. And even though my yoga teacher, like it's not doing a yoga practice because I can do that in my home. It's like being in that environment of a studio with a collective, because once again, it's a collective of human beings, mostly women, but a collective of human beings that are
Mhm.
syncing their breath,
Mhm.
syncing their intention, and showing up in silence, not to impress, not to compare. And I think that's what my medicine was within yoga. And it's funny because I remember after my first daughter was born, my husband was like, "You need to get back into yoga because you're a way nicer person." And it's so true.
Totally.
It really
Totally.
impacts me. And so, yeah, no,
Yes.
that is on the agenda as well. If finding somewhere nearby that I need the studio environment because like I can do the movements here,
Yes.
but then once again, it's just exercise. I
Yes.
needed the full embodiment, which was like what the African dance was, which was what
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
West,
yeah.
like that
Totally.
full embodiment of like
Oh,
pleasure. But
got it.
yeah.
Oh, okay. And then I think, um, yeah, I think it was very similar for me. Like, and so this is why I'm thinking about this is like the theme of safety, and like, and that's what Wild Roses provides. Because I saw that like play out with you, but then for me, it was like, and you know this, connecting with my Indigenous ancestry. And I had told you I had this profound moment the second year at Wild Rose. Like, of course, I'm thinking I'm there for fertility and whatever. And then I met this woman who basically we're just having lunch at this table. And basically, she says to me, what did she say? An empath? I don't remember what word she used, but basically, she was like, I can do a reading for you. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, I'm sure this lady can do this reading for me. And of course, she was an Indigenous woman. And we had ended up in this random conversation about there was a few women sitting kind of like we were none of us were sitting together, but we overheard each other, and all of us had Indigenous ancestry that we had been, except for the medium or the intuitive hadn't been, but the other two women and I had both been like disconnected from our Indigenous ancestry. And so we got into this crazy group discussion, and then she did a reading for each of us. And I told you that, like, this is so weird. I was holding her hand and she was doing this reading, and all of a sudden I could see a line of my ancestors standing behind her. And it was like, I've never seen any ancestors before or since, but it was like such a profound thing that happened. And so then again, of course, this year I'm circling back to that, going, I still know there's something to heal here. Like, how do I connect with this when my family, because my grandparents went to residential schools, is completely disconnected from their Indigenous roots? And then, of course, find myself at Michelle's, and I can't remember her last name. You know who I'm talking about. There's a
I think it's
lovely
Cunningham.
Indigenous,
I think
something
it's Cunningham.
Cunningham. So she is there every year, or she's been there every year that I've been there, and she does like a medicine drum workshop to make medicine drums, and then she does some other workshops. So what happened was I went up to her after she had done this profound, like, I don't know what it was called, maybe you remember, but she did a talk, and again, it was about connecting with your aunt. Oh, I know what it is. It was the medicine wheel, right? Is that what it
Yes.
is? Yeah.
Yes.
Where you go to each corner of the medicine wheel and you connect with your ancestors, and it's this whole thing. Or maybe not everyone does that, but I did. And I went up to her afterwards and I gave her a hug, and I said, like, I'm really struggling to connect with my Indigenous ancestry. And she grabbed, like, put her hands on either side of my body and was just like, she used an Indigenous word, but basically, like, you are an Indigenous woman, you belong, like, you're safe to connect to this. And it was just like, oh my gosh. So that's kind of what I'm working through. So back to the theme of safety, like, only at this festival once a year am I able to connect to that and really, like, shift things in my life in terms of not being afraid to connect to that piece of myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, we talked a lot about that because it was really interesting. Like, you having Indigenous roots, our other friend that was with us having very deep trauma and healing around her Asian roots as an immigrant. And then me, this white woman, who, like, it's funny because I was just like, I'm a white woman, but I had so much trauma that I had to relive. And it was like, I remember at one point going like, I don't know if I can really, like, I don't know if this is, like, fair to share. And you were all like, and I think it was you that was like, it's all the same trauma. It's just from different lenses. And, like, my trauma comes a lot from my mom's teen pregnancy and how that played out, and bless my mom and all the stuff that she went through. But every feeling she had, all that fear, all that anxiety, all the struggles that she had to go through during the pregnancy, not post-pregnancy, like during that pregnancy, I truly believe I absorbed in that womb. And it's so interesting that the challenges that I face in this lifetime, it all comes back to those exact same feelings of a 15-year-old who's terrified about her future, right? And so it was really interesting when we were able to ponder this and talk about it from three different lenses, like from your lens of, like, healing your intentional roots, and then, Susie's interpretation from hers of, like, the deep healing that she has to do from her Asian roots, and then from me going, like, poverty and the fear of this little teen that really held so much shame and held so much uncertainty and rejection, and how I have really worked hard to combat that. But yet that's my little demon that keeps popping up often in life. Which, and then, full circle, like, let's talk about trauma here and dealing with trauma. there was two things that happened at Wild Rose. Like, okay, so first there was like, let's back up here. First, I got to feel embodiment in my body and move my body in a way that brought pleasure and released pleasure in a way that I have not experienced in, like, I think ever, which was so amazing. But then flip the coin and go into the shadow side. Like, that was all very joyful experiences. But then go into the shadow side. Every joy has a shadow. Every shadow has a joy, right? We see this all the time, no matter what kind of inner work we do. And when I went into when I was, well, so when I was forced, when I was presented the opportunity to go into my trauma at this past weekend, there was two incidences that had profound effects on me. One of them was in this workshop where we had to partner up, and then we had to pretend like we were postmenopausal, and we were sharing some wisdom about what it was like to be postmenopausal. And the whole idea behind it was that, we heal this misconception that we're holding right now around how menopause is this awful transition in life, and how, it's going to totally disrupt our world. And it was really interesting that when I turned and I shared with the person that I was partnered with, I was like, hi, I'm Kate. I'm postmenopausal. And, I get to just do these things in life that bring me so much joy now, because I don't give a shit what anyone thinks. Like, I don't care what people think of my body. I don't care what people think of my actions. I'm here at this festival. I'm half naked and I just really don't care, because you know what? It feels great not to have to wear a bra. And then out of nowhere, and that was like all playful and fun. But then out of nowhere, these words came out of my mouth that I finally get to be the mom that I've always wanted to be to my children and my grandchildren, that I just did not have the time to, when I felt like career and life had to be a hustle. And it was like that, and it's a simple comment, but it brought me to tears, because then it was like, well, fuck. I'm hustling and I'm not being the mom that I want to be. And it's so true, which everyone's going to learn more about next week in the episode when I talk about rest. And the new reframe that I have that I want to share with you guys about where I'm at. But it was really interesting, because this is a theme that I'm feeling really called in my life right now, is I love the work that I do, but I don't want to do it by the rules that I've been told that I have to do it by, because it's making me have to sacrifice being the mom that I want to be. And that was like such a profound thing of just like, how can I find a balance? Like, what do I need to do to free myself up so that I can be both? So that I can be a womb revivalist and a menstrual cycle coach, and help these women in rediscovering who they authentically are by understanding their menstrual cycle, while still being this mom that is there and is available and is playful and is connected and, is really leading and demonstrating the new way to exist as a woman in this world. And that is one that is cyclical and balanced and not burnt out and overwhelmed and not playing by this 24-hour clock game, right? And I was like, but I'm not doing that. So that was one really profound. And the second one that I had was when we had to go into the SRT with Elise, and we went back 13 generations, which I know seems like a lot, and it was a lot, but we went back to like our mother, right? And can we envision her and what she might be feeling right now? Can we just feel it in our body? And then it was like our grandmother, and then it was our great grandmother. And it was when we went to my great grandmother that I had this, because I knew my mom and I knew my grandma very well. Like, those two I knew very well. I did not know my great grandmother. And it's interesting, because when we talk about my great grandmother all the time, we always talk about technically my step great grandmother, because my great grandmother died in childbirth. And it's interesting that when I was called there, that's when the emotion came. Those were when those tears came, that she was just grieving this sadness or this worry that she had to allow her daughter to go out in the world to figure it out on her own, or to figure it out on their own without her wisdom, right? And just some of that sadness of like, I feel like I didn't set you up because I couldn't be there because I died, right? And so like, it was just really like, it was amazing how you didn't know that these things were in your field, and then they get called upon. if it's true or not, who knows? But it's something that's deep down inside my core that obviously I had to feel, or that's part of my identity because it came out. And it was so, so profound to feel that. And then, of course, they bring you back through all these generations, and then you can infuse it with the opposite. Like, can you now feel how they feel balanced or happy or hopeful or whatever? And it was just such a beautiful, beautiful practice. But moving through trauma and starting to reflect upon some inner stories that maybe we're not as fully aware of was really, really impactful for me. What would you say was your big impactful moment besides what you shared with Michelle and so forth?
Well, that, and then I had two follow-up moments, which, and I'm sure anyone there's two speakers I've seen again and again, Maddie Trapp and Jillian. I can never say her last name. She's the joy coach. And when you see like these people around, you're kind of like, oh, they're like semi-celebrities in the spiritual world in our community, and you don't, but I've been, doing some work, and some of the meditations I've been doing leading up to this workshop have been like picture people in your mind that are where you want to be, or who you would care about their opinions, who you really admire because of like, what they're doing in the world. And so, sometimes I'll picture Oprah or, whatever. There's like, and so then occasionally I'll picture like, Maddie Trapp or like someone like that. And then both Maddie and Jillian and I had like a personal conversation, just randomly. Like I ended up beside Jillian in a yoga class, and I had bought her book earlier that day. And she had said to me, like, how are your friendships right now? Are you feeling like they're fulfilling? And I was like, holy shit, Jillian, like you just called me out on something I didn't even know was on my mind. And so then she and I had a follow-up conversation about it. So like those conversations, and to be able to talk to women you greatly admire was really profound. But I'm thinking about this now because you and I haven't talked on the phone since we were away last weekend at the Wild Roses. And since then, two interesting things have happened. My cousin came to stay with us, and he's from my like Indigenous side of the family. And we were having this conversation late into the night because he's working on his own stuff. And I said to him, like, you and I and these two other cousins of ours are both, and I guess the four of us are healing generational trauma. Like it's so clear to me that like we're the stop in the line. Like we're the ones that are here to heal that trauma. Like mostly because we have the tools our parents didn't have, right? Like, and how grateful we need to be about that. I'm sure my mom would have loved to heal this stuff, but she didn't have the tools, and I do. But like I've just been reflecting a lot about what it means to be like, I'm sure there's a term for it, but to be the one who's going to heal that trauma of like residential schools and colonialism for my family. I mean, it's such a gift, but it's also like so intense sometimes. So I've been thinking about that. So my cousin came, that's another thing. And then something else you said really hit with me right now, about being a woman in this generation right now at this time. I can't remember what you were saying. But we're in the process of hiring a nanny, right? Because I go back to work in October, and we interviewed someone. We didn't hire them. And my husband and I have been having some follow-up conversations about the kind of help that we need in our home when I go back to work, to like a bigger job, right? I'm a lawyer and I'm going back to manage lawyers. So it's going to be even more stressful. And he said something to me, I don't think he meant it this way, about how, like, should we really be paying this nanny this much money? Like, all she's going to be doing all day is taking care of the baby and like cleaning the house. Like, that's easy. And I was just like, holy shit. Like, we're here right now. Like this, you think it's easy. And that's the problem of this generation, is we're still fighting. Like, I don't know how many times I've had to turn to him this mat leave and be like, yeah, I'm taking care of two babies and I'm making my full salary as a lawyer. Like, fuck off. Like, we're doing big things. We have big jobs that because of, the work generations of women have done before us. But we're still having to do the heavy lifting within our marriages to like say no, like it's hard work for someone to take care of a baby and take care of the house, and I need that help. And maybe
Mhm.
it doesn't seem of value to you because I'm the one that does it, but it's a value to me. And we need to spend, $30 to $40,000 next year on a nanny and not back down from that. So that's what I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting you bring this up because I think that this is some of the awareness that comes in when we are in community with other women, when we are in that sisterhood, is that we start to see the importance these rules have, right? Like I don't think we were ever designed as a society to raise children by ourselves. Like this is something new in the modern world. Before it was like kids were raised by communities. Women were supported to be able to be all the multifaceted things they could be because we all were like webbed together in this beautiful community.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're in the wild rose, we feel that web, we feel that container, we feel held, we feel like women are like, holy shit, you did that? You take care of two kids every day and you're a lawyer? Like,
Yeah.
woman, how do you do it? Right? Like we're in these containers where we're actually seen for all the magic that we do. And then it's coming back into the real world.